Just wait till we start going live. Got it. So now you always look back on the Shiur online. Okay, good morning. Thank you all for joining. We're holding here in Mesechta Megillah Daf Tes Zayin Amud Aleph 16a. And the Gemara is now going to have a nice long story. Those who like stories. What happened when Haman received the grave news that instead of the king wanting to honor him, the king is now going to want to honor Mordechai. And Haman is going to have to be the one to lead him around and to honor him in public on the king's royal horse. So what happens to Haman? How does he deal with this devastation? How do we deal with bad news? He didn't take it too gracefully. And Mordechai, he milked the opportunity to its finest, and he took very good advantage of Haman, as we'll see. Says the Gemara. Gemara explaining the Megillah. As it says, Vayikach Haman es halavush v'esasus. Haman took the garments and the, where is it? That one? And the horse. Vayalbesh es Mordechai. And he dressed Mordechai. Vayarkiveyu b'rechoi ve'ir. And he paraded him in the city square. Vayikra lefanav. And he called out in front of him, Kacha ye'aseh le'ish asher hamelech chafetz bikarei. Thus shall be done to the man whom the king wishes to honor. So there's many drawings, pictures, depictions of Haman leading Mordechai on the king's horse. I just chose one of them at random. You see, here's Haman, and he's leading Mordechai. Mordechai's wearing all the royal robes, and you're going to see he ended up not wearing the crown of the king, but the royal robes, the royal horse. And Haman's leading him through the city, announcing, thus shall be done to the man whom the king wishes to honor.
You want to double click on that, Rabbi? It's small.
You see?
Oh, and there is actually Zeresh.
That's his daughter holding a can of what they will call, what would be the ancient toilets, stuff that they would use for the toilets. So, and she thought that it was actually Mordechai leading her father Haman on the horse. And she dumped it all over Mordechai, not knowing that I was really dumping it over her father, Haman.
They made Haman look too good looking. They should have made it look more for crooked.
So let's continue with the Gemara. Says the Gemara, and Haman went, Vayikach Haman es halavush v'esasus. Haman took the clothing and he took the king's royal horse that the king used for his coronation, and he went to find Mordechai. Where did he find Mordechai? Azal Ashkechei, he found Mordechai. The Yasvira Banan Kamei, the sages were sitting in front of him. Umachvi Lahu Hilchas Kmitza l'Rabbanan. He's teaching them the laws of a koimetz, kmitza. What is kmitza? Kmitza is whenever you bring a flower offering in the Beis HaMikdash. Sorry about that. Whenever you would bring a flower offering in the Beis HaMikdash, you would put onto the mizbeach, onto the altar, a small amount of flour with oil inside. That would be the amount of 3 fingers, and then you would take your last 2 fingers, wipe off the excess flour, and that would be burnt on the mizbeach, on the altar. Everything else would be baked or fried, depending what type of karban mincha it was, and be eaten by the Kohanim. So Mordechai was demonstrating for the Talmidei Chachamim, for the Torah scholars, the laws of kmitza, how to take the flour for the mizbeach. Kivin the Chazie Mordechai, once Mordechai saw Haman coming towards him, the apik lekable, and he saw that Haman coming towards him, Visuse mechad biyadei, and Haman had the reins of the horse in his hand. Mirtas, Mordechai started to tremble. Mordechai became scared that maybe Haman is now coming to kill me. It wasn't a secret. Mordechai saw, the whole city of Shushan saw this gallows 50 amas tall being built in the city. Amar lahu l'Rabbanan. The Rabbanan, the sages, told to Mordechai told to all the students that were sitting in front of him, Hai Rashia lemiktel nafshi ka'asa. This evil man has come to kill me. Zilu mikamei. Hurry up and run away. Diloi tikavu begachaltei. And go hide, because you should not get caught up, burnt up in his coals. Hurry up, because it's, there's danger, and you shouldn't get caught up. Rashi over here says the reason why Mordechai was teaching them such a halacha, such a law of a koimetz, bringing a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, although 66 years already have passed since the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the Jews are about to get killed within a year, so there won't be another Beis HaMikdash. And Mordechai is teaching them, not just telling, showing, demonstrating the laws of the Beis HaMikdash. Rashi says because this was the second day of Pesach, and on the second day of Pesach, we bring a carbon called a carbon omer, an omer sacrifice. We bring from the new grain, and so Mordechai was showing them how from the carbon omer was brought on the Mizbeach. And he's teaching them the halachas which would apply in the Beis HaMikdash on that day. So he told them, hurry up and hide. He told his students, you should not get harmed by Haman. Why did he use the term coals? Because we remember before, it says Haman was filled with chema. Chema means burning anger. His anger burned. So Haman is in a state where he wants to burn everything. So that's why he used the term to run away, so you shouldn't get burned by Haman. Says the Gemara, Bahi Shaita, at that moment, Nisatef Mordechai put on his talus, he wrapped himself in a talus. V'kam lei litzeloisa. This is already the morning, the sun's coming up. Mordechai is feeling these are his last moments in the world, so he wrapped his talus to start davening. He was davening for mercy from Hashem in order that Hashem should save him. It says, in Mordechai, he would wrap usually a deres, which is a beautiful talus. And so whenever he would daven in a time of peace, so Mordechai wanted to show I have trust in Hashem, and therefore he wrapped himself in his talus. Asa Haman, he has a very, some people came to observe him. The Yosef Lekamayu. Haman sat down, came over to where they were, and he sat down in front of them. The Oirich, and he waited. Adesalik Mordechai Litzelusei, until Mordechai finished davening. So we already saw that Haman was nervous in front of Mordechai. But from the fact that it says Haman sat between them, between the students, we see that none of the students agreed to leave Mordechai. Mordechai told them, run away. And they told Mordechai, Bein lemisa, bein lechaim, anu imach lo nazvaka. Whether to death, whether to life, we will be with you. We will not abandon you. We are not leaving you, Mordechai. The Tiferet Chachamim writes that Haman wanted to disturb Mordechai, mix up Mordechai, to bother him while he's davening, because he wanted to take away his kavanah from davening. The Ben Ish Chai writes, and we're going to get to this maybe a little sooner, soon, that the reason that Haman came to the first feast, and instead of pleading for her life by the first feast, Esther said to the king, come back by the second feast. Why? Come back a second time. Because she saw that Haman yatsa sameach v'toiv who's in a happy mood, the simcha. When a person is b'simcha, when a person is happiness, in a happy state, you cannot harm him. From Shemayim, they help a person who's b'simcha. It was only by the second feast, when Haman came all depressed from having led around Mordechai the whole day, smelly because his daughter threw garbage on him and she jumped to his death. And now he's forced to come to the meal, to the feast with Esther and the king. He saw that Haman, when she saw that Haman was ovel, he was sad, and was very depressed. So then Esther said, now is the time to get Haman, when he is no simcha. So in a similar state, when Haman sees that Mordechai is davening, and he's davening very sad, very serious, he didn't want to disturb him, because he says, Mordechai is sad now. Maybe I'll still be able to get the better of him. If I tell Mordechai the good news that now the king wants to honor him, suddenly maybe Mordechai will become happy. I don't want Mordechai being mesimcha. I don't want him being happy. And because if Mordechai is happy, bad things will happen for Haman. When a Jew is besimcha, whenever we are besimcha with joy, Hashem makes us have immense blessings, immense brachas. Nobody could harm you if you're besimcha. So therefore, Haman waited to tell Mordechai the news that the king wants to honor him until after he finished davening. After Mordechai finished davening, or rather while Mordechai is davening, Haman is going and speaking to the students who are around. Amar lahu, while he's waiting, he told the other sages who are there, B'mai asiktu. Tell me, what Gemara you're learning? Mm-hmm. He wanted to know, what are you learning now? Amrulay, they told him what we're learning. We're learning that the laws of Kemitza, the laws when a person donates to the Beis HaMikdash a carbon mincha, a flour carbon, a flour sacrifice, and you take 3 fingers full of flour that go onto the Mizbeach, and Bizman sheBeis HaMikdash kaya kayim. And they told him, when the Beis HaMikdash is standing, man de mindav mincha, whoever pledges a flour offering to the Beis HaMikdash, a carbon mincha, there's different types of carbon mincha, some that come in conjunction, meaning as part of another carbon, and some that come independently as themselves, which are the mincha of the carbon omer, second day of Pesach, and what you do on Shavuot is shtei alechem, 2 loaves of bread, and the lechem apanim, the showbread. You also have a carbon mincha of an individual. Some are made in a pan, some are cooked in a pot, sort of. Some are baked, fried. So they're telling him that we are learning about a carbon mincha. They didn't tell him we were learning about the carbon omer, the omer sacrifice, which was brought the second day of Pesach, because that's a omer, which is, you could say, a nationwide and in truth a global carbon, because the carbon omer, you cannot eat chadash, any new grain, until the carbon omer was brought. Even today, there's many circles which are matbid, careful about chadash. Perhaps we'll have a class throughout the summer about the idea of chadash.
I mean, Israel is actually the machlokes where she disagreed as far as she chadash only outside of Eretz or is it there too?
In general, you could say that in Eretz Yisrael and the lands around it is where chadash is. Mm-hmm. The Bach has a major chiddush that even in Eretz Yisrael, if it's owned by a non-Jew, it doesn't have the din of chadash. So, but this is like a worldwide carbon, a carbon you could say that has a lot of clout. They're talking about even a carbon mincha, even a regular fistful of flour from an individual carbon of someone who donated to the Beis HaMikdash is so powerful. So they told him, we are learning about the koimetz, the amount of the flour that gets put onto the mizbeach, burnt on the mizbeach, from a flour carbon, a carbon mincha. Omer lahu, Haman said to them, Asa malay kumtzi kimcha didchu, your fistful of flour has come. V'dochi asara alfei kikre kaspadidi, and has overpowered my 10,000 talents of silver, which I had pledged to Achashverosh in order to destroy the Jews. Haman, he offered to pay Achashverosh 10,000 talents of silver. The Rabbi Circus, the Bach writes that the reason why he offered 10,000 talents of silver is because, like we spoke about in the car, the average lifespan used to be 70 years. You would start giving a machatzis shekel, half of a shekel coin, on Rosh Chodesh Adar. You would give it from the age of 20. From the age of 20 till the age of 70 is 50 years. There's 600,000 Jews. Each one gives a half a shekel. So per year, there are 300,000 shekel. And over the course of a lifespan of 600,000 people, it's 42 million shekel, which are going to be given to Machatzah shekel for the entire Jewish nation for 70 years. And that equals 42 million shekel is 10,000 talents of silver. Each one is 420, each one is 40, I think 4,200. 4,200, 4,200 piece shekel in every single talent. So times 10,000 talents of silver, that's 42 million. So Haman wanted to give Achashverosh the equivalent of all the Jews' machas shekel throughout their entire life in order to destroy the Jews. So, and he told them, your fistful of flour, which is incomparable, worth much, much less, has overpowered my 2,000 shekel, my 10,000 talents of silver, which I wanted to give. Chafetz Chaim, you heard of him? Chafetz Chaim, Mishnah Brura. So the Chafetz Chaim writes about this. He brings a Zohar, which says that if somebody is in a shul and he talks about the bringing karbanos, he should have in mind that what he does is doing it only l'shem shemayim. And you should know when he does that, he's able to remove all the worst decrees that there are out there. The Chafetz Chaim, in his yeshivas, he instituted, they should learn Mesechta's Kodshim, all the Gemaras about the karbanos, which are usually the Gemaras which are the most neglected, you could say, in yeshivas.
Because it's harder to picture without offering the karbanos.
It's something we're not familiar with.
Yeah.
Damages, houses, fires, cows, properties, neighbors. These are all things, Shabbos things, Erevin, these are all things that we could relate to. But karbanos, tuma, tara, purity, impurity, these are things that we aren't even familiar with, these terms. And to go delve into them is very difficult. But the Chafetz Chaim in his yeshivas, and many of the brisker yeshivas followed suit, they learn about Hilchos Kodshim, of the karbanos in the Beis HaMikdash. So when you learn about this, Chafetz Chaim brings some this Gemara. We see that Mordechai, in the time of Galos, he was teaching his students about karbanos. And Haman admitted to the fact that your karbanos that you're learning about have overpowered all the evil decrees, which I put all this effort and all this figuring out how to do it, has overpowered everything. So learning about karbanos, it's like you brought a karban, and therefore, if anybody has any hardships, troubles in their life, you should learn about karbanos. And we're going to Mirz Hashem learn today about the Beis HaMikdash. The Chassam Sofer, heard of him? Chassam Sofer, the Moshe Sofer, Pittsburgh. he actually has a fascinating exegesis, you could say, explanation on this thing. There's different types of things which are batel b'shishim. For example, if I have a big pot of chicken soup and a drop of milk fell in, is the chicken soup still kosher? Yes. Why? Because they say it's batel b'shishim. It's nullified 1 in 60. Okay? Certain things are called batel b'shishim, nullified 1 in 60. Truma is consecrated grain that goes to the kohen, mixed in with other grain. So it's batel 1 in 40 or 1 in 50. The Jewish people are 1 in 70, the 70 nations of the world, and so if we are 1 in 70, we should be insignificant, right? If we're, let's say, 1 in 40, 1 in 50, so then we're still significant. 1 in 30, you're not batel, right? If you have a cup of milk falling into 30 cups of chicken soup, it's not kosher. But if it's one, you have 100 cups of chicken soup and 1 cup of milk falls in, it will be kosher because it's nullified. It's not significant in the larger sum. So the Jewish people are 1 in 70. In 70 nations, and Jewish people are only 1. So he's saying that the Jewish people are not significant, and therefore, he told Achashverosh, they're spread out among all the nations of the world. They're not together, so they can't even be a davar gush, a davar beria, something significant in one spot. And therefore, it's not a big deal if you destroy them because they're so insignificant among the nations. And he says even more. Chaim Sofer writes, if you have a truma which got mixed up into 50 or 60 parts of non-truma, all you have to do is you have to redeem it, meaning take that money, which that truma cost, and say that truma is going on to this amount of money, give that to the kohen, and then even a non-kohen could eat all 70 portions of the non-truma, of the truma. So he tells Achashverosh, I'm going to redeem the Jews. The Jews are like truma. The Jews are Hashem's consecrated people, but they're so insignificant, and I'll give you the amount of money for the Jews. So it's like they have no more importance, and therefore it's impossible for them to be saved anymore. However, really, Mordechai was learning with them the laws of the Omer, the laws of a kmitza, challah. The shiur of challah you have to give a kezayis. If you have mem gimel beitzim echonesh beitza, 43 1/5 eggs. According to the Rambam, an egg has 3 kezesim, the size of 3 olives. So it comes out that a challah has to be the size of 129 olive, 129 kezesim for it to be chayav in challah, to take challah from it. A koimetz, the amount of flour you take, is never less than 2 kezesim. So a little bit more than that, than 2 kezesim, right? 2 kezesim plus a little bit.
And you said actually the Rambam says that a kibitza is the size of 3 olives, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So it comes out, and a koimetz is always 2 and a little bit kezesim. So if you times that times 60, let's say 2 1/5 times 60,
Okay.
you're going to get more than 129,
Yeah.
right? And challah is you have to have 129 kezesim of size. So he says the Jewish people are really the truma from the rest of the world. So really 1/60th or more than 1/60th. So therefore, we're not batel. So when he sees Mordechai learning the halachas of challah, of how to take the koimetz, he realized that I can't overpower the Jewish people. If you look over here in Tosfos, Tosfos says a very fascinating thing. Sees Tosfos. Look what Tosfos writes: "V'dochi asara alfei kikre kaspa." You have overpowered 10,000 talents of silver. Shemati, I have heard, shasara alfei kikar kasef oin lechatzi shekel l'chol echad Yisrael. 10,000 talents of silver equal enough for all 600,000 Jews. And he wanted to overpower everything that the Jews did. So this is the idea of what we spoke about before. So Mordechai is saying a fascinating thing. The Jewish people are not about quantity. What's more important? We're about the quality. You take even one koimetz, one fistful of flour, and that's able to override all the rules of Haman, all the plans and schemes of Haman. And Tosfos is telling us a deeper message. There's two ways of going about things. You can go in the ways of what should we do? We're in Galus, things are so hard. We could go in the way of Simcha. Mordechai, by learning about Hilchos Kmitza and davening, he is totally ignoring Haman. He's already living in a Geula mindset. He's living in a mindset which is above the world. Haman, he wanted to build a gallows 50 amas tall. So now it's the first day of Tiferes HaOmer. We count 49 days. The 50th day is Shavuos. He thought that he could reach beyond the world. And here's the first day of Tiferes HaOmer. He thought that he could use the power of 50, go beyond the 49, and he sees Mordechai learning and teaching about Tiferes HaOmer, about the carbon Omer. This is the first day of the Omer, right? It's the second day of Pesach. So this is how Mordechai is able to overpower Haman. Let's continue. There's a famous question that seemingly the Mizbeach was already built during the time of Mordechai. So why is Mordechai talking about the Mizbeach like it's something abstract? There was a Mizbeach already built during the days of Koresh. And he gave permission, and many Jews lived in Eretz Yisrael. However, it seems like perhaps either one of two things: either that Beis Hamikdash, either that Mizbeach was destroyed when there was the Haman's son Shimshi, when he wrote his accusations against the Jews, or the Mizbeach never received complete holiness because the Jews never moved back to Eretz Yisrael yet. So therefore, they couldn't bring. They built the Mizbeach assuming the Jews will be moving back. But once the construction of the Mizbeach was halted, and Koresh put up guards saying Jews are no longer allowed to go to Eretz Yisrael. If you remember the story we said, he was walking through the market of Shushan, and he sees it's empty. So where's all the commerce? Where's the economy? Oh, the Jews all went back to Israel. So he says, that's it. No more Jews going back to Israel. So at that point, it's impossible for the Jews to live in Eretz Yisrael. So you can't have the Kedusha of the base of Mishbeach anymore. They have to stop bringing Karbanos. Let's continue a little bit here in the Gemara. Next page. We can continue with this story. So he says that you, with your fistful of flour, overpowered my 10,000 kikar kesef, my 10,000 talents of silver that I have given to the Beis Hamikdash. Amar lei. So they told back to Haman, all the students, Rasha, evil man, Eved shekana nechasim, Eved lemi unechasim lemi. You are a slave of Mordechai. If you remember the story we brought earlier, that Haman, one time in desperation, he sold himself as a slave to Mordechai. So if a servant acquires something, they don't belong to him. A slave, everything he owns belongs to his master. How are you trying to show off that you gave 10,000 talents of silver to Achashverosh? It's not your money. It's Mordechai's money. In addition to that, Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz adds on that Haman, when he saw the king wasn't taking his 10,000 talents of silver, he took a lesson from Vashti's great-grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar, when there was a decree that he'll be killed for all of his evil that he did, destroying the Beis Hamikdash and killing the Jews. He asked Daniel what to do, and Daniel says, "Chatacha b'tzedakah proik." Give a lot of tzedakah, you'll be saved from all your hardships. And that's what happened. Nebuchadnezzar gave out tremendous amount of money to poor Jews, and he promptly forgot about it. 2 years later, he's walking on the ramparts of his castle, of his palace, and he sees lines of poor people. And like, what are these poor people doing here? Because you don't remember, dear king, that 2 years ago you said we should give out money to the poor, and we're giving out every day tons of money to the poor. And the king says, chase them all away, be gone with all of them. And that day, Nebuchadnezzar was exiled, became an animal in the forest, became like an animal. So Haman gave these 10,000 talents of silver to tzedakah, trying to be like Nebuchadnezzar. And he says, how could your one fistful of flour overpower 10,000 talents of silver I gave to tzedakah? Mordechai says, you think you gave tzedakah? You're giving tzedakah with my money. What type of tzedakah you think it is? Right? I remember years ago, there was a certain Jewish person who ran a Ponzi scheme. And when he was in court, he says, well, look how much charity I gave. And I told him, you gave tzedakah, you gave charity with your own money. He gave charity with money that really belonged to other people. Right? It's very easy to be generous on someone else's. If you have your parents' credit card, it's very easy. Right? So he's telling Haman, you didn't give this charity. It really was my money. Now Haman tells Mordechai, Amar Le told him, Kum, get up. Levush hanimani, put on these garments. V'rechoiv haisusya, and ride on this horse. The boilach malka, for the king wishes you to do so. So now Mordechai starts milking the situation. Amar Le tells him, Lo yechilna, I cannot do so. It's not respectful for me. I'm middle fasting, I'm wearing sackcloth, ashes. Ad ailina lebei bani, I have to enter the bathhouse. The eshko lamazia, and I have to cut my hair. The lav oirich amma l'shtamushe b'manei de malka hachi. It is not proper to use the king's garments, to wear the king's garments if I'm not groomed and respectful. We see Yosef was 10 years in prison before appearing to before to Haman. He had to cut his hair, to change his garments. He said, I can't wear the king's garments and go on his horse until I first get a bath. Shudder Esther. In the meantime, Esther went and sent messengers. Vasartinu lekule bebani, and they closed down every single bathhouse in the entire city of Shushan. Ulekule umni, and to all of the barbers in the entire Shushan told them, don't go to work today. The queen decrees today, all of you cannot go to work. Haman saw there's nobody else to do it, and there's no choice but to take Mordechai and lead him around and parade around. All ihu levevani. So he had no choice, but he himself went and brought Mordechai to the bathhouse. The asche, and he himself gave Mordechai a bath.
He's cutting his hair.
Cutting his hair, correct. The Vilna Gaon adds over here, so if Esther, what power did she have to decree that she's not a king, the queens have power to decree that no one could go to work that day? And also, it looks like suddenly she's, a minute ago, last night, she was Haman's best friend, so to speak. Now she's Haman's enemy. So he says that Vilna Gaon says that she used the Shem, one of the holy names of Hashem, to put a stop, to stop all the barbers from going to work, making that they couldn't do their job. So Haman had no choice, and he himself brought Mordechai to take a bath, and he washed Mordechai. Now Haman himself had to give Mordechai a haircut, so he went and he brought scissors from his house. because shakal be'mazye, and he had to cut Mordechai's hair with the scissors. There's a question. Remember what day it was?
It was the second day of Yantiv.
Well, okay, right, second day of Yom Tif. So how can Mordechai get a haircut on the second day of Yom Tif?
Okay.
It's Chol Moed Pesach, you know. Still, you don't get a haircut on Chol Moed Pesach. Or Yom Tov Sheni Shagalius, outside Eretz Yisrael, they have to do Yom Tov Sheni.
Yeah.
It's the third day of the fast. It's Yudalit, Tezvav, Tezayin. So how can Mordechai get a haircut that day?
You know, so actually in those days, I'm not sure if they had the decree that you have to keep the second day, but it certainly was the case. If you weren't, I'm hearing from the messengers whether it was exactly what Rosh Chodesh was. So then out of doubt, you kept the second day.
Okay, so you're saying in the times of Mordechai, the sages were well versed when exactly is a day.
See.
So that's what you're saying. That's actually an answer given by some people that during the time period between the first and second Beis Hamikdash, they did not have Yom Tov Sheni Shagalius.
It would only be actually if someone was in doubt. It was far
Correct.
away. Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
Also, perhaps this is a reason why Esther said that none of the barbers should go to work that day, because she doesn't want a Jewish barber to cut Mordechai's hair because it's Yom Tov. But a non-Jewish barber is allowed to do it, let's say, a mitzvah for the need of a mitzvah. So for here's a big mitzvah.
Ordinarily on Kollel we don't get a haircut, though, right?
Ordinarily, but let's say a mitzvah for the need of a mitzvah, you're allowed to. For example, someone's making a bris for the child, they can get a haircut that day. Right? So Mordechai is doing a big mitzvah here. It's Kiddush Hashem, and he's destroying Amalek. In addition, there's another halacha that a person is not allowed to get a haircut from a non-Jewish barber in private. But here, if it had to be done in public, because Mordechai, all the barber shops were closed, Mordechai needed to get a haircut in a public place.
And wasn't that halakha? Isn't that halakha just? That's actually when we were worried actually that we're going to kill us.
Correct. You don't think that Mordechai was worried that someone's going to
Oh
kill
yeah,
him?
yeah, exactly, sure.
Let's continue. Let's finish this part of the story. Behadi the kashakil lay at the time that Haman is giving a haircut to Mordechai. Ingid v'isnach. Haman started having pain and Haman started groaning. Amar lay. So Mordechai asks Haman, "Amai kamisnaches? Why are you groaning?" Amar lay. He told him, "Gavra have a chashuv le malka mikule rav ravanahi. I am the man whom one time the king had regarded more important than everybody else in the entire kingdom, and nobody among all the officers of the king was as great as I was. Hashta l'shave balani v'saper. Now I became a barber and a bathhouse attendant." Amar lei, Mordechai told him, Mordechai scolded him, "Russia, evil person. The lav sapar shakfar kartzum ayisa. Why are you groaning? You were a barber in the town of Kartzum. Kartzum is a town in northern Israel, in northern Galilee, somewhere over here. Kartzum, Karnos, it's in Galil, in northern Israel. You were a barber there. Hana, we learned in a brisa. Haman sapar shakfar Kartzum hoya Esther mishtayim shana. Haman was a barber in the village of Kartzum for 22 years. And they just, about 10 years ago, they unearthed actually a advertisement from Haman's barbershop in Kfar Kartzum. Let me play it for you. Make sure that volume's up. Highest.
Forward, liberty, backward, mushroom, if you person can't, liberty, forward, liberty, backward, sharp is blade, backward, I give you first and hand. It's forward, backwards, on display, stop, and let me help you.
Click your head if you got that. There's a lot of just like funny innuendos that put into this thing. So you were a barber in Kfar Kartzim for 20 years, 22 years. What is 22?
22 is
Letters of?
Kaf Yud.
No. What is letters of what? Hatzvi-Bais, Oisius. It's 22 letters of the Aleph Bais.
Oh yeah.
Right? The Aruch Yisharim, he says that there's something deeper. Mordechai was telling Haman, you were trying to say that the Jews are not keeping the Torah and the mitzvahs. 22 years you were a barber in Kfar Kartzim. A barber meaning 22 letters of the Aleph Bais, and a barber is somebody trying to cut off the hairs. You were trying to cut off the Jews from keeping mitzvahs for 22 years, and just like when you cut off hair, the hair is no longer able to grow, it's not alive. You're trying to cut the Jews off from their source. You should know that's your end, because we have a Karban Mincha. Karban Mincha is a flour offering. It's the same thing. You cut off the grain from the ground and no longer could grow. But the flour from there is able to be brought up on the Mizbeach. Don't think just because you will have the ability to cut off people from keeping the Torah that the Jews are will now be able to fall into your hands. So now that's why he's saying you wanted to kill the Jews. We Jews are bringing ourselves as a sacrifice to Hashem. It's a Aruch Yisharim, a book. Kabbalah brings us shot down over here. So that's what the significance of what you were 22 years as a barber. There's other midrashim which actually bring down that Haman's father was a barber, but it's possible that his father was a barber and he just took over the job.
Family business.
Correct. And then he was busy giving haircuts to all of his sons. Imagine 208 sons, right? So that was his full-time job. That will continue now for the next, for over the course of the 3 weeks. We'll be learning, the last 2 years, we learned a lot of Hilchas Beis HaBchira, the laws of the Rambam about the Beis HaMikdash. An important thing to learn as well is a Mishnayos called Mesechta Middos.
Is that a Pirkei Avos?
Good question. Middos is one of the lesser known, I would say, Mishnayos. Middos means measurements.
And it has no Gemara, right?
It does not have a Gemara, correct. Mesechta Tameh talks a lot about the ideas of Middos, Mesechta Middos. And so we'll learn some of the Mishnayos, and throughout the Mishnayos, we'll be going back and forth with pictures from this Mishnayos, which I'm going to bring up on the screen, and pictures from the Temple Institute, which we've done the last 2 years, learning about that. And we'll learn some of the Mishnayos of Mesechta Middos, the architecture of the Beis HaMikdash. Some of it is quoted in the Rambam, Hilchos Beis HaBchira, the laws of the Beis HaMikdash, which we have learned. So let's continue. I don't know if everyone on Zoom could see the Mishnayos. So here is the Temple Mount, the Beis HaMikdash, the Temple Mount. This is a bird's eye view as it is today. I mean, this is going according to the opinion that the Dome of the Rock is a current place of the current Dome of the Rock is a place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But regardless of that, for us doesn't make a practical difference in regards to our learning right now. This blue area over here, that's the area of the modern day Kollel. The Kotel. Kotel Hamaravi. Right? We have just a small portion of the wall, of the western wall of the Beis HaMikdash, which we see. The rest of it is actually exposed, some of it overground, some of it underground, and it's about a quarter of a mile long, I think, or half a mile. No, about half a mile long, actually. Right, the wall of the Hatzvi-Bais.
Can you put it on the screen?
Are you able to see it?
No.
Oh, now you can see it.
No, only the text. Now I
Only-
see it. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the dimensions of the Beis Hamikdash. Was about the Hatzvi-Bais was about 36 acres large, the entire area. Now, the first Mishnah Mesechta Middos speaks about the walls of the Hatzvi-Bais, the walls of the Temple Mount, with all the entrances and the gates of the Temple Mount, and then the entrances and the gates of the actual Mizbeach, the temple itself. The first Mishnah we're going to learn is the places where the Kohanim and the Levim, the Kohanim and Levis, would have special locations where they would guard the Beis Hamikdash. They would watch it, not a guard in order to protect it from soldiers. There's no fear of armies or soldiers attacking the Beis Hamikdash. And when it was, then the Levim wouldn't be able to protect it. It was an honor guard. And so we're going to the first Mishnah will show us, will list all the different places Kohanim and the Levim would guard the Beis Hamikdash. Outside the entire Beis Hamikdash, meaning the city of Yerushalayim, you didn't need Kohanim and Levim to guard. But inside, you needed Kohanim and Levim to guard the area. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see these pictures. Everyone over here will be able to see it. The question is, I don't know if they could see it on the screen. Okay, this is pictures from my Mesechta Middos. This is a drawing of the Beis Hamikdash, Hatzvi-Bais. It's just a layout. And you see there are 5 gates to enter the Hatzvi-Bais. The Shar Shushan, the Shushan gate, the Shar Teddy gate, not named after Teddy Kollel, Mary Yerushalayim. Shar Kipainus, named either after a person or just means a Kipainus is either the name of a person or it's, I don't remember what the other one was. I think it means a garden. And then there was the Shari Chulda, the gates of Chulda. That's the one we've seen recently with the double gates. That was the main entrance of the Beis Hamikdash. And it says on the bottom of a grand staircase, Chulda is buried. And there's another Shari Chulda, another one of the gates of Chulda over here on this side. And this is the complex of the Beis Hamikdash itself, the tall building inside of the large courtyard. And here you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gates to get in over there. So let's learn a little bit inside the Mishnah. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah inside. B'shloisha mekoimos, in 3 places, hakohanim shoymrim bebeis hamikdash. The kohanim, the priest, would stand guard in the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash had watchmen in 24 locations. 3 of them, kohanim, stood watch. In the other 21 places, it was Leviim who stood watch. I think we have a few Kohanim here, but I don't know if we have any Leviim.
Physically, you're only.
Between both locations.
Oh, you're a Kohen, right?
What?
You're a Kohen, right?
No.
Or who's a Kohen?
Ira is a Kohen.
Ben Basque.
And my father's mother was a Bas Kohen.
No, my mother's a Basque. Ben Basque.
So in 3 places, the Kohanim would stand watch over the Beis Hamikdash. One is called the Beis Avtinas, House of Avtinas. That's a place where they would mix the Tiferes, the incense in the Beis Hamikdash, had a very special recipe. And there was the family of Avtinas, like we say, the Asper family. So they were called the Avtinas family. And they were experts in how to make the Tiferes. And it was a secret kept in their family. And the Beis Avtinas, it was on the southern side of the Beis Hamikdash, on the southern side of the Azara. So let's go into our Temple Mount, into the gates. On the southern side of the Beis Hamikdash was the Beis Avtinas. So if we look over here, it was right where the mouse is over there. The Beis Hanitzutz, in the house of the flame, it was a place where a bonfire always built. Uve Beis Hamoiked. So I'm going to bring up over here the pictures again. So here's Beis Hamoiked. This is a house which had a dome. Half of it was inside the Azara, half of it outside. And in this house, there was a place for Kohanim to sleep, to get ready for the next morning. And this is one of the places where the Kohanim would stand watch. This place over here, the Beis Hanitzutz, where we're zooming in over here, this is also a place where Kohanim would stand watch. Over here, you see a place like a platform for Kohanim to watch. And the Beis Avtinas, on the other side, there's a platform over here on the second floor, and that was the third place where the Kohanim would watch. So outside of the Mizbeh, outside of the Beis Hamikdash, inside the Beis Hamikdash would be nobody throughout the night. There would be certain Kohanim which would be burning the leftovers of the Herbanis on the Mizbeach, on the altar. But outside, the Kohanim would stand watch every night in this place called the Beis Hanitzutz, this place called the Beis Hamoiked, and this place called the Beis Avtinas. So let's maybe do it like this. Levi, maybe you could see it now. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Beis Avtinas, the three purple labels were the places where the Kohanim kept watch. Beis Avtinas, Beis Hamoiked, Beis Hanitzutz.
And pink labels.
The pink labels, yeah. Beis Hanitzutz, it was built on top of the Shar Hanitzutz. And Beis Hamoiked literally means a bonfire. There would be a bonfire for the Kohanim to warm themselves up. Valeviim, and the Leviim, all right. Be'esrim, ve'echad mekaymus. The Leviim, they would stand guard in 21 locations in the Beis Hamikdash. Where would they stand guard? So chamisha shari habayis, arba al arba pinois of mitoichai. Chamisha shari azara, arba al arba pinasa mibachutz. So let's go back to the diagram of the Beis Hamikdash. Like we said, here is a drawing of the entire Temple Mount. See, it's on a hill. There are four corners. On the Temple Mount, on the four corners, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, each one of these circles had a Levi standing guard. Usually it would be two Levim standing guard together. And everyone inside of the Temple Mount, not outside. Every one of these pink labels is a gate of the Hatzvi-Bais of the Temple Mount. Here it's called the Shushan Gate, because on top of it was a relief of Shushan, the city of Shushan. It also faced towards Shushan. This is called Shar Teddy, the Teddy Gate. It's called because I think it's a name of a certain officer whose name was Teddy. Shar Kipoinus. the Shar Kippur, it was right next to a flower garden behind the Beis HaMikdash. And Shari Chulda, the gates of Chulda, there were two gates, and so in both of those places, Leviim, in all five of these places, Leviim would stand watch, plus the four corners of the inside of the Beis HaMikdash. So what's 5 plus 4?
A 9.
9. Then there were in the Har Habayit, in the Temple Mount itself, the temple itself, there were once again 5 gates. One is called Shar Hamayim, the gate of the water. One is called Shar HaBechoros, the gate to the firstborn, where the firstborn karbanos were brought. Shar HaDelek, the gate of the fuel. Then there were Shara Karban, the gate of the sacrifice, Shara Nitzutz, the gate of the fire. So if you see over here, for example, Shara Nitzutz, there were two places to guard, one on the bottom and one on top. Kohanim would be standing on bottom, Leviim would be standing on top. So there are 5 gates of the Azara, of the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, which we just went through, and then on the 4 corners of the outside of the Azara. From the Temple Mount, they would stand on the 4 inside corners, because you're allowed to be inside the Hatzvi-Bais, the Temple Mount, overnight. But when it came to the Azara, on the 4 outside corners, they would stand. You were not allowed to be in the Azara overnight. So 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 5 plus 4 is
18.
18. So far, we have 18 places where the Leviim would watch. And in Eretz Hashem tomorrow, we'll go through the last 3 places where the Leviim would watch.
And then you have the Ezra's Nation, which comes up actually nowadays